as we see it, the metrics show us, the data shows us that for every available chiropractor, there's 5 available opportunities right now, 5 to 6 jobs available for every associate doctor that's out there in the world that's available, right? So in other words, these associate doctors are incredibly valuable.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And we are thrilled to be in this conversation with you. Today, we are starting a 3-part series about the remarkable associate relationship. We're going to take a peek behind the curtain. We're going to be looking at the foundation and fundamentals. So if you are a student, or if you are a prospective associate doctor, or you're an active associate, or you're an owner and a CEO, hey, we're speaking to you. What we're going to be walking through in these next 3 parts and these next 3 episodes are going to be giving you insights into how to make this relationship truly remarkable. Dr. Stephen, I'm thrilled to be able to jump in with you. I'm going to be firing a lot of questions at you over this episode, and I know the next few episodes. So I'm eager to dig deep, because this is something that, as a coach and in this space, working with doctors and associates myself every single week, I know how important it is to get this right and to do this right. And we've got a plan for you. So, Dr. Stephen, I am excited to dig in. How about you?
So, for sake of transparency, Pete, I have to admit that I have a lot of motivation around doing this series, frankly, right? So here's the truth, and I'm going to give the conversation some context and maybe build a little street credit for us around this topic, right? So, at the end of the day, getting this match made between the owners looking to hire associate doctors and the talent, the associate doctors looking to be hired, getting this match right, getting this associate doctor thing right is wicked hard, right? So I love to say it's wicked hard, but it's worth it, right? The juice is worth the squeeze, but it is incredibly difficult to get this right? So it is rife with opportunities to screw it up. We are going to do everything we can to make sure that we can mitigate your exposure here and reduce the risk of you screwing this up. Here's why, right? So most of you know that I'm one of the principals in Chiro Matchmakers, right? So that's one of my businesses inside of the chiropractic ecosystem. Just a little background behind that. So in the remarkable practice, we like to say we solve the problems that doctors show up with, and we create new problems for them, right? And the new problems are usually associated with scaling and growing their businesses, right? So, and those problems are usually personnel problems. So, truth be told, as we found that we kept running into these bottlenecks with our coaching clients, their abilities to keep growing and growing and growing, because they kept running into these staffing and team building issues. Not only CAs, but definitely with associate doctors, right? So we recognize that was stifling the growth and the potential. So, I saw that as a market gap. And long story short, we created Chiro Matchmakers to solve that problem, right? To help our clients specifically, and now globally, chiropractors inside and outside of the remarkable practice, help them solve the puzzle of finding those A players, right? And creating world-class teams. So, I spend a lot of time in this space, right? We will place hundreds of chiropractors, associate doctors in chiropractic this year, right? So, and that's awesome, right? That's awesome. But I'll tell you what, it's really hard to do this well, right? So you've heard the stat before, 67% of these associate doctor relationships go bad, right? Not our relationships, not Chiro Matchmakers. We have an extraordinary track record for success, right? So we just knew that failure rate was terrible, and we needed to fix that, which was really the heart and the passion, the soul behind us creating our Chiro Matchmakers system, where it's just based on science. We're not guessing. This is science, and you don't have to guess. So here's the truth. Like right now, we have 150, 160, 170 jobs available right now, and as we see it, the metrics show us, the data shows us that for every available chiropractor, there's 5 available opportunities right now, 5 to 6 jobs available for every associate doctor that's out there in the world that's available, right? So in other words, these associate doctors are incredibly valuable. right? So you've heard us in this podcast before talk about how incredibly valuable a COO is, right? A chief operations officer, and how rare they are, right? So for every one COO, there's 4 CEOs, right? So for every one chief operations officer, there's 4 CEOs, right? Well, for every one associate doctor, there's 10 COOs. Right? So it's like when you go down the pipeline of rarity, I mean, man, associate doctors are incredibly rare. So my purpose in this content is to make sure we don't screw that up, right? So when you do find that right associate doctor, you don't want to screw it up. So we'll spend a lot of time really coaching both sides of the equation. We coach the associate doctors who are applying for the job, right? So the talent, getting them ready to write resumes, get clarity around themselves, what they're looking for, how to present themselves, how to interview, what they're looking for in an opportunity, how to negotiate a contract, and, comp plans, et cetera. And on the other side of it, the same thing with the owners. Like, we have to coach them. Here's, help them get clarity. This is what you're looking for. This is who you're looking for. This is how you write the ad. This is how you interview to find that person. This is how you set up expectations and agreements. Pete, you can imagine this is almost like premarital counseling. For anybody that's married, you've probably through your church had premarital counseling where they met with the bride to be, and they met with the groom to be, and then they meet with you together as a couple, and they ask you all of those questions no one else is asking, right? What they're trying to help you see is you got to go into this thing with eyes wide open, because just like with a marriage, this associate doctor relationship is incredibly difficult. It's wicked hard, but it's worth it.
Absolutely, Doc. And so one of the things that's crystal clear right now is that, associate doctors are hard to find if you're a CEO. So speaking to you CEOs, and you know this, if you've been searching for them, it can be very hard to find. It's also really equally as important to say that it's also really important and hard to find a good match. So if you're a CEO and you're listening to this, we want to help you find the right match. If you're an associate doctor or even a student who's listening to this, we want you to know that it's really important to find a good match. Okay. So we want you to help you find the right fit, right? So if you're the CEO and you're listening, we want to help you find the right fit for your practice right now. We're going to walk through exactly how we do that, Doc. And if you're an associate or a student, you're looking for the answer to those questions, we're going to help you do that. So today I want to focus on them. I'm probably going to ask about 5 questions, Dr. Stephen, to you today. I want to frame this out for everybody so that as you're listening, you're going to walk through. So we've created, what are the top 10 to 12 questions that you need to be able to ask and to know to be able to get this right. So today on this episode, I'm going to be focusing on really the top 5, the first 5, Dr. Stephen. I want to walk through those today. Then we'll pick it up in our next episode with the next probably 4 or 5, and we'll keep it going. So we've got 12 specific areas and questions and kind of concepts that we want to unpack for you. And so we want to jump right in, Dr. Stephen, to this conversation. So let's start with the first one. This is, again, the question is, that we need to be able to answer is, what's next for you, right? So what's next for you? We're talking about the tracks to success. And Dr. Stephen, you and I know that, growing up in chiropractic, for me, it was really one track to success and there was everything else, right? The track to success was to be an owner. Everything else was just out there, right?
Yeah, second-class citizen, frankly.
Second-class citizens. And I know for me, coming out of school, going into an associateship before I went into ownership, I understood that. I felt that myself. So Dr. Stephen, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the 10 tracks to success and really, answering the question, what's next for you?
So let me frame this in a way that it's probably going to make it easy for people to listen and consume this, right? So it's almost like, I love the way you put it. It's a look behind the curtain for the owners, right? So imagine if you were getting married, Dr. Pete, you and I both were married. We married successfully, married inside the church. And, we both went through this premarital. I was like, imagine if you could get a look behind the curtain around what the priest or the pastor was saying to, or talking to your wife, ahead of time. Be like, here, listen, here's what I'm going to be talking to her about. So wouldn't that just give you great insight? You're like, okay, I'm so glad now I understand going into this conversation exactly what's being said, right? So this is an opportunity for the owners to understand we are grooming, we are preparing the talent to be able to, number one, find that right match, right? And not to blow it when they do, when they're like interviewing and when they're negotiating their contract, et cetera. So let's have a conversation. Let's sort of role play this, and we can do this, I guess, interview style, where it's like, if I were speaking to the talent right now, those that are looking to be placed, this is the conversation that we would have with them, right? So the first question, as you asked, is, so, what's next for you? In other words, like, do you even know what's out there, right? So, because it's been my experience, coaching, thousands of chiropractors, dealing with thousands of students. I've had 39 associates myself. I think you had 15 or so associates yourself, right? And now we've coached hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of practices to bring in associate doctors. Like, people have no idea all the different tracks to success, the different models. There's a lot of options out there, right? So we actually created a program called the Next Program, which is actually facing this, it's actually, the message is for that chiropractor who is deciding what's next for me, what's the next step in my career, right? So the obvious one is the recent graduate or the soon to be recent graduate, or maybe it's an associate that's in a position they're looking for their next opportunity, or maybe somebody who's decided they don't want to be a business owner anymore and they're looking for different opportunities. So the Next Program actually highlights what we call our 10 favorite tracks to success, right? So there are lots of ways to be successful in chiropractic today. The Next Program actually outlines our favorite 10 tracks to success, and it actually unpacks it on a deeper level that's beyond the scope of this conversation. So if anybody wants to check that out, we'll put a link to the Next Program down below. You can learn more about that Next Program here. But ultimately, we talk about, there's so many options, and these options aren't right for everyone, but there are options that are right for you, as a listener. And it's based on a couple of things. Number one, it's based on what are your core values, like what's most important to you. Number two, it's what is your vision for success? In other words, what does success look like for you, right? And we always talk about now, next, and ultimately. So what is your vision for success, right? And then the third piece of that is, how are you hardwired? In other words, we recognize God only makes geniuses, right? And we're all hardwired to behave a certain way. This part of your personality, this part of your mind is called your cognitive behavior, or your cognitive hardwiring, right? So this is, how do you take action? How do you behave? And, we in chiropractic, we use a very specific test. It's called a Pro Scan. And we're measuring 5 things. We're measuring dominance and extroversion, pace, patience, compliance, and then energy style. And these tell us about who you are as a human being, and very predictably, how are you going to behave in the practice setting, right? So this is about knowing yourself, right? So when these 3 things overlap, your core values, your vision story, and how you're hardwired as a human being, now you have a lens through which to consider these 10 tracks, right? So you're not just guessing, you're not just taking a job that's available, you're not just taking a paycheck, right? You are actually using discernment, right? You have a lens based on yourself as you're considering these different tracks to success. And they are wildly different tracks with wildly different experiences and wildly different requirements, frankly, okay? And, if we were to list them in order of, let's say, of risk, right? So there's open your own practice from scratch, right? Buy somebody else's practice, maybe buy into a franchise or join a corporate model, right? Maybe you come in as a classic associate doctor, right? So you're a caregiver associate doctor, maybe you're a business builder associate doctor, maybe you put yourself into an equity position, right? As a, some type of partnership. Maybe you get yourself into a plant to partner situation where you might be planted in a remote clinic that you are a partner in with a established practice, or maybe it's a plant to purchase where they plant you in a practice where the plan from the beginning is you're going to buy out that practice, right? Maybe you're an independent contractor, right? So Dr. Pete, what I'm trying to say is there's 10 different pathways that we advocate, and each one of those 10 pathways is based on who you are as a human being, as an individual, which is, the easiest way to land there is, like I said, what are your core values? What's your vision story? And how are you hardwired?
Okay, let's take a